Hi witchlings, or witches. Welcome back to my channel. It's me, your local chaotic witch aunt, and today we are talking about the art of protection. This is kind of a video concept that I've been toying with for a while. It's gonna be kind of part talking, part showing some aspects of my practice that are kind of more daily, like daily upkeep. However, I really love the idea of viewing protection and protection magic as an art. I think the reality for me recently is that I haven't had a lot of energy to do really in-depth spell work like protection spells. So what I found myself doing instead is tailoring my life around my practice to include bits of protection magic every day in small ways. And I wanted to share some of that with you because I feel like, you know, spells are fantastic. I love doing spells. I love a good candle spell. However, with kind of some recent health stuff, it's been a little bit more difficult for me to do things that I normally do, like smoke cleanse or burn incense or all of these things. So instead, what I found myself doing is incorporating protection into my life in very mundane ways. Some of these ways include choosing protective foods for my body, which is for me a kind of a whole conversation in itself. So I've kind of split this into a couple categories. We have like the more witchy stuff, witchy protection that I do every day. I have my food or the way I protect myself and my body in terms of nourishment, and then I kind of have communal boundary protection. I think that like a lot of these methods are considered a little less witchy, but they are in an essence a lot of the folk magic I do right now. It can be something like anointing or spraying with a certain material, or even cooking with protective plants, which I'll talk about. The first kind of section I want to discuss is the more witchy things I do in terms of protection and protection magic. And a lot of these things are very accessible. You can do them at home. You can make your own oils for anointing. You can make your own sprays for spraying yourself with. You can enchant protective earrings. Benji, what? Go lay down. The kind of more witchy aspects of this are anointing yourself with protective oil, which I tend to do every day. I like to use Panacea, which is an oil I made because I feel like it has most of my protective allies in it. I like to use Cursebreaker, which is an oil I made, and then I typically throw in an oil from a friend. A lot of the oils I use that are not my own are from the Death Witch, Kitchen Toad, Voga, and Franny. And I use some from my friend Marcella. I use a lot from my friend Jax, and I just kind of take a little time each morning when I can to prep myself for the day with anointing. I set my intentions, I put it on pulse points, I spray myself, and I kind of sit with the oil and see, hi, what do I need from you today? How are you going to assist me? And for me, that's the most important part. It's not just throwing it on and going about your day. For me, there's a little bit of time and intention spent with it, just kind of sitting there, being like, hey, I need protection today. How are you going to protect me? Protective oils and anointing oils come in a lot of different forms. You can choose literally an olive oil with protective properties and bless it, or say intentions over it and anoint yourself with that every day. I've known people to make their own protective anointing oils, or you can always find one that you'd like to purchase. I will put a list of all the oil makers I mentioned down in the description. There's a lot of, for me too, in the terms of more witchy protection that I like to do every day that is more minimal. Gravitation towards protective symbols or charging of jewelry. I spend a lot of time wearing protective amulets. This may be a protective amulet that's specific in general, is just protective, like a pentagram or something like the mano cornuto, which is what I'm wearing today. That is a protective amulet in your culture. And I found that in wearing those protective amulets, not only do I feel more secure in my protection rituals, but when I talk to those and I kind of connect with those amulets in a way that is very personal to me, like charming them, charging them, enchanting them, I just kind of have a little bit more success with a lot of my other protection rituals. This could be, I wear my like cornichello every day, I wear my minofiga earrings or my mana cornuto earrings. I did have cornichello earrings, but I think one of them broke and I'm now missing the back of another one. You could even choose symbols that are important to you. So sometimes that could be the cross. If you and your family and you have a personal relationship with the sign of the cross and you find it protective, but I understand that it's not for everyone. I'm not going to tell you to go wear a crucifix if that's not your vibe. Pentagrams are also a really great choice, but choosing protective jewelry and incorporating that into your daily routine. A lot of times I like to make my own. I get a pair of hoops from like wherever, Etsy, and then I get charms and I add them on and I make my own jewelry. I don't go out of my way oftentimes to buy really expensive jewelry, and that kind of brings the folk magic elements into it. I see what I have on hand, what's available, and I use that. I really like working with plants and spirits of the earth for protection. This is once again very witchy, but I'm going to share a few ways that you can kind of incorporate that into your day-to-day. One of which is choosing a shampoo and a conditioner that contain protective allies for you. So you're literally washing yourself and washing your hair with them. My shampoo is made with rose and my conditioner has olive oil in it. So I am spending a lot of time making sure my hair is nice and healthy, but also making sure that I'm connecting with olive and rose as protective allies every time I take a shower. A lot of people you can also incorporate this in your moisturizer, into the kind of lotion you're using, and the kind of fragrances you're choosing and the perfumes. But working with plants and spirits of the earth also makes sense in terms of food and nourishment. And what that means is choosing protective allies in a dish. A lot of the food we eat is protective, or a lot of the food we can choose to eat is protective. It actually nourishes us, it protects us from getting sick and all these things. So I like to choose protective foods for my body, and here's the thing is that's going to be different for everyone. Some foods that are really protective for me are not going to be protective for you, and that's okay. It's about finding the foods and the kind of things you can consume, the allies you can literally eat that are protective for you. For me, salt, kitchen herbs, rosemary, garlic, lemon, those are kind of my biggest protective allies in the kitchen. I also drink a lot of broth. Chicken broth, bone broth, whatever you make. I like making it at home, but for me, my most protective foods are the ones that I'm familiar with, the ones that my body likes, which means bone broth. I drink a lot of Amati bitters, Amato. I take a lot of time to make my own, and then I kind of cater it to like the cleansing and the protective, or adding Amaro to different creating Amaro for different purposes is like my favorite activity. I haven't done it in a while, but it's my favorite activity. I mean, my thing too is like salt. Salt is the biggest ally, in my opinion, for protection. My coworker and I were talking about it, and she's like, salt loves everyone. Salt loves everyone, and it's purifying, it's protective. You put it in almost every food you eat. So spending a little bit of time with salt and saying, hey, I need a little extra protection this week, and I'm gonna eat you and consume you throughout the week through this dish. Can you help me with that? And I've noticed a big change in just sitting with the ingredients that I'm cooking with and saying, hey buddy, I need some assistance. It also has made chicken soup one of my favorite protective dishes, because not only is it really nourishing when you make it at home, but it contains so many protective allies. Garlic, sometimes lemon, rosemary, bay leaves, all of these things can be worked with for different purposes. You can spend some time with it, say, hey, I need a little help. And that's for me kind of the way I do it. And also I think that we tend to overlook food a lot as protection, right? But there are certain foods that help us a little more when we're feeling sick. There are certain foods that help us recover from illness. There are all these foods in our arsenal and all these kitchen herbs that we overlook because we're like, well, I use that all the time. It's so common. Basil is not gonna be any better. Basil is my best herb, okay? I love basil. Basil and all these kind of like herbs that we overlook because they're common can be so protective when you cook them in things. Have you ever had someone who has a really good relationship with basil cook you food? That brings money in like nobody else. Or bay leaves, it'll bring you success, or lemon for purification, and noticing kind of what's going on in your life and what kind of food you need. So you're sick, you choose healing or nourishing foods. If you need success, you may choose foods that are a little bit more amped up with energy, spicy. And if you just need a little bit of stability, you may choose things that have a lot of grounding food in it. So like if you're a meat eater, meat. If not, you can choose some plants. Plants are obviously the best grounding food. Totally up to you, but I think that recently when I'm not having a lot of energy, the kind of food I'm putting into my body for me has been so important, not just in a sense of like I'm sick and I need nutrients, but also in a sense of protection. I've been choosing foods that I know will help protect my body, that I know will nourish me, that I know will help me with whatever inflammation is happening in my body. And that, I think, is so important and imperative in folk magic and folk medicine. And we see, you know, food being the first kind of thing. If you're sick, food is the first thing you go to before you go to any herbal remedy. And in terms of folk medicine, it's, you know, learning what your body likes, what your body needs, and going from there, and starting with food and I'm not diet and stuff before anything else. Since food is very traditional in Italian American folk magic, most of the food I'm cooking is protective. There's a healing element to it for me, like ancestral healing, and there's also a mindfulness aspect to me of spending time with the ingredients I'm cooking with, not just seeing them as something to consume, but really just saying, hi, you're gonna help me with this, or can you help me with this? Protection magic and the art of protection is also not just about us as individuals, but about us in community, us in ways of being, and how we reciprocate relationships with the allies that protect us. All spirit relationships are a listening and a returning. Every single relationship you have with a person is listening and returning. Every single relationship you have with anything is listening and returning. It's not any different when you're talking about protection magic. One of the things that I think upped my art, my protection, and turned it more into almost an art form rather than just something I was doing because I felt like I needed to, was really kind of spending time thinking about what the best ally would be in that situation. Right? Like, who's gonna help me and who is going to really benefit me? Who do I need right now and who is willing to help me? Because sometimes spirits say no. Sometimes you're sitting there and you're like, I really need chicken soup, please help. And they're like, not today. Example, I've been consuming reishi tea right now. It's delicious. Quote is, one touch of nature makes the whole world kin. Love it. But reishi is a new ally for me. It's not an ally I've worked with before, and I'm kind of meeting it and needing it and kind of just starting this, and I'm aware that it may not go well or it may not last, but I'm still trying, you know? I'm consuming reishi, and then I sit and I listen. I'm like, what is reishi doing for my body? How is it helping me? How can I communicate with it? And I go from there. I feel like protection is also about boundaries. And I say this all the time, but magic and mundane and boundaries is protection. That is part of the art of protection. It's knowing your limits. It's knowing what you're okay with. It's knowing what you're not okay with. And sitting there and saying, okay, here's my line. I don't want anyone to come over this. And that in itself is one of the most powerful aspects of protection, because you're able to forge greater relationships and stronger relationships, not only with the spirits that you're working with, but with all the people around you that you're building community with. You're spending time learning kind of how to move forward and what to do, and how to socialize, says me. But I'm gonna do another video at some point about spirit building and kind of like spirit relationship building, and more about the listening and responding process and what that can look like, because everyone's always like, go petition spirits, go venerate spirits, but like, what is a yes, what is a no? I'll talk about that in that video. And this video is mostly just saying that protection magic doesn't have to be a candle burning for 12 days if that's not accessible to you. It doesn't have to be you sweeping your entire house with salt if that's not accessible to you. It can be sitting and connecting with whatever you're eating And I mean, like, this is all, I guess, mindfulness and animism in a lot of ways. That to me is what changed my protection magic practice in itself. It's being mindful about what I'm doing and including allies in a lot of different ways. So maybe this video will be called "This Changed My Protection Practice," because it did. All these things I'm saying did change my protection practice. Seeing things more as a relationship and not just like oh, I'm eating this so I have to, you know, it's something to eat or something to work with or something to invoke. And I'm not giving anything in return. But giving something in return to me was monumental. Monumental, really. And that's what changed my practice, is that kind of realization that everything I'm doing is just intertwined, and intertwining it, but also being respectful and also sitting with it and having intentions. And that, to me, that is the art of protection. It's taking it a step further than just doing a candle spell and sitting and communing with whatever you're asking to help protect you. Being like, okay, I can do this. I may not do a little charm with these, but I am going to show a little bit of what you can do with Juniper as a protective ally, because Juniper is one of my favorite protective allies, and I feel like no one talks about Juniper ever. So give me 1 second. I gotta go grab the Juniper. This is Juniper from my front yard. Very sweet, very fluffy, very beautiful. I like to work with my local spirits, but Juniper, you can get bundles from it. It's more difficult to find in stores, I feel like, than most evergreens, but any kind works. So Juniper is known as a purification and protection ally in my practice because it burns bright white when you burn it, whether it's dried or not. I like to think of it too as when I'm looking at a protective ally, I like to note the leaves, the plant itself. This one is a little bit spiky. If you touch it the wrong way, it will poke you. I've noticed a lot of times when I'm picking Juniper, trying to work with Juniper, and Juniper doesn't want me to work with him or her or them for that spell, I will get poked a lot, a lot. Whereas when Juniper's okay with being worked with, I don't get poked at all. I just am, you know, like walking around, and I can touch it a bunch of times and I'm fine. So Juniper clearly wants to be on camera. She's okay with it. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna either find local Juniper or get a Juniper bundle. And I like sitting with these branches because for me, it's very much like Juniper's in my yard. Juniper is protecting me all the time in a very physical sense. So I like to spend a lot of time with it. It's also an evergreen. It'll grow all the time. It'll be there all the time. Sometimes more fresh allies are difficult to find. But I like to sit with Juniper, and when I sit with Juniper, I like to talk to Juniper. I like to pray with Juniper, and this is less of a spell and more of just a guide to working with this plant. And I'm talking about it because I love Juniper. I love Juniper for smoke cleansing. She's always in my smoke cleansing routine all the time, and if not her, it's pine. There's always an evergreen in there. I don't know why. But Juniper, you can take a sprig of her and you can burn it and carry it around your house for protection. You can hang her by your front door or plant her by your front door from protection from theft. And honestly, I really just like having her around and having her by my like front of house, the front of my house, as a protection method from theft. Juniper as an ally, I feel like her lesson or his lesson or their lesson a lot of the time is to be mindful with the type of protection you're choosing. I think she really encourages me to be a little bit more spiny, you know, having boundaries, because the plant itself, like I said, if it doesn't want to be used, it'll poke me. Being really confident in boundaries and also being really confident in demanding protection for your space and protecting your space and protecting yourself and your body. You can put Juniper in a little bag and carry her with you. She, I find, works really well with hyssop and rue as a purification bundle, and as a protection bundle, I like putting her with a little fennel and a little bit of rue. Hyssop is a really good purifying ally, but Juniper I feel like is so underrated. So a spell you could do with her, very simply, like I said, you can tie her, you can bind kind of the end and hang her near your front door. Juniper is very strong, so you can actually hang little protection on there if you want to, or you can just do a little, like, you know, sit with her, do a little binding, like a little witch's knot spell on the end, hang her by your front door, and ask for their assistance with protecting your home from theft and keeping negative energies out. She is one of the best purifiers I've ever worked with, next to salt. So you could even take her and bury her and sit her and salt, put them together and put them by your front door. For me, I really like burning juniper. I like having juniper around the house. I have a bundle, a Madonna della Erbe bundle that I learned from my teacher over in there, and there's a little juniper in it. And for me, just kind of sitting with juniper, seeing, hey, what do you want to help me with? I think this one right now is just like, hang me, because not like in a bad way, but like because I keep talking about hanging her, so I'm thinking she wants to be hung, this specific branch. The other thing about juniper, she smells delicious. And here's the thing, you can take juniper and just like place it on a high surface. I like to keep all my plants and stuff away from the pets. Keep it on a high surface. It looks beautiful for decoration and super protective. I love juniper. Also reminds me of Santa Lucia, so I use her a lot. But juniper as an ally, I feel like for protection is a great place to start if you are like, I need something that's just gonna get rid of all these bad vibes and protect me. Carry her with you. You could be very like chill and like just do. You could also make things from her wood if you're a wood carver. I don't know how her wood is for carving things, cannot say, but I will say, so interesting. She looks so fun. I just love juniper. Anyways, so that's kind of my sharing. It's not even a spell, it's just like how to approach juniper, and maybe always remember that they can say no to you. But juniper as a protective ally, I feel like is a fantastic place to start because you can just work with her for so many things. And even though that's more witchy, I've gotten to the point where juniper's just in my practice all the time, especially because she lives outside my house. Thank you so much for watching. If you want, you can like, subscribe, and comment, but absolutely no pressure. Remember to drink water and have a great rest of your day. Siate benedetti.